Disclaimer: this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before starting or changing any health, fitness, or supplement routine. Today we're going to explore Cardiogen, a peptide that falls within the group known as cytomedins, which are short peptide bioregulators. Cardiogen has been studied primarily for its effects on the cardiovascular system, particularly the heart. The idea behind these bioregulators is that they may help restore normal protein synthesis in specific organs, supporting regeneration and repair at the cellular level. Cardiogen specifically targets cardiac tissue. To understand Cardiogen, it helps to know a bit about the history of peptide bioregulators. These peptides were originally discovered in Russia, where researchers isolated small peptide fragments from animal tissues. What they found was that very short chains of amino acids could act almost like genetic switches, turning on or supporting the expression of certain genes linked to tissue health. Cardiogen was isolated from heart tissue, which is why it is linked directly to heart function. So, what does Cardiogen do? The main proposed role is normalizing protein synthesis in cardiac muscle cells. Protein synthesis is essential for repair, maintenance, and adaptation. In aging or stressed hearts, protein synthesis can become dysregulated, leading to reduced resilience, scarring, or weakness. By regulating these processes, Cardiogen may help support the structural and functional health of the heart. Some studies suggest Cardiogen can improve the metabolic processes within cardiac cells. That includes supporting energy production, balancing oxidative stress, and potentially improving the efficiency of heart muscle contraction. Think of it as helping the heart operate closer to its optimal design. This could make it relevant in scenarios where the heart is under strain, whether from aging, chronic stress, or disease. Research into Cardiogen has looked at conditions such as coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction recovery, arrhythmias, and heart failure. For example, studies from Russian groups have suggested that patients taking Cardiogen showed improvements in heart rhythm stability, exercise tolerance, and recovery after cardiac events. While these findings are intriguing, it's important to stress that most of this research is not widely replicated in Western clinical settings, so the evidence base is still considered preliminary. From a biochemical standpoint, Cardiogen is a tetrapeptide, meaning it is composed of 4 amino acids. Even though that seems very simple, its activity is highly specific. That's one of the fascinating aspects of bioregulator peptides. They don't act like drugs that try to force a single outcome. Instead, they appear to restore balance, nudging systems back toward their natural baseline. This makes them different from conventional pharmaceuticals. Another important point is that Cardiogen is often described as tissue-specific. That means it doesn't just generally affect the whole body, but it targets cardiac cells in particular. This specificity is what gives it potential for use in regenerative medicine. It may help optimize how the heart responds to challenges, from everyday wear and tear to more significant damage. Let's talk about practical aspects. Cardiogen is not something you typically find on supplement shelves in most countries. It has been produced and studied in Russia, where it was sometimes made available as part of medical or anti-aging programs. In other regions, it remains an area of research and access is limited. That means people interested in it should be cautious and informed, since regulation, quality control, and scientific validation are not consistent worldwide. In terms of delivery, Cardiogen is usually given in very small doses, often orally in the form of capsules or sublingual tablets, though injectable forms exist in research contexts. Because it is a very short peptide, it can be stable and effective in oral forms, which is not the case with many longer peptides. Typical usage in studies has been in cycles, such as 10 to 20 days of daily administration, followed by a break. The idea is not constant use, but rather targeted periods of support. People often ask whether Cardiogen can be combined with other bioregulators. The answer is yes, and in fact that is how it has been used in practice. For example, someone might take Cardiogen alongside visalamin, a peptide that targets blood vessels, or endolytin, a pineal peptide involved in circadian rhythm and longevity. The combination is thought to support systemic balance, improving the health of multiple organs and systems at once. Now, let's consider potential benefits that have been reported. These include improved recovery after heart attack, better tolerance of physical activity in those with heart conditions, stabilization of cardiac arrhythmias, and reduced angina symptoms. Some researchers also suggest that in aging individuals without diagnosed disease, Cardiogen could support general cardiac resilience, making the heart more resistant to stress and deterioration. It's also worth noting the potential role of Cardiogen in stress adaptation. The heart is highly sensitive to chronic stress, whether emotional, physical, or metabolic. By helping regulate protein synthesis and metabolic processes, Cardiogen might offer protection against stress-induced damage. This ties into the broader philosophy of bioregulators, which is about normalizing function rather than forcing performance. When we talk about limitations, the biggest one is the lack of widespread clinical trials outside of Russia and a few neighboring countries. While anecdotal evidence and small studies are promising, more rigorous, large-scale research is needed before Cardiogen could be considered a mainstream therapy. That doesn't mean it isn't useful, but it does mean that anyone considering it should be cautious, skeptical, and aware of the regulatory gray areas. Side effects with Cardiogen appear to be minimal in the studies that exist. Because it is composed of amino acids, it is generally well tolerated. The body naturally breaks peptides down into amino acids anyway, so the risk of toxicity is low. However, that doesn't mean there are zero risks. As with any biologically active substance, there could be unforeseen effects, especially in people with complex medical conditions or those taking multiple medications. Another question people often have is whether Cardiogen could be used for athletic performance or longevity. While not its primary focus, supporting cardiac efficiency could indirectly enhance endurance and recovery. In longevity circles, Cardiogen has been proposed as part of anti-aging stacks on the theory that protecting the heart is one of the most powerful ways to extend health span. Since cardiovascular disease is the #1 cause of death worldwide, maintaining heart health is central to longevity strategies. It's fascinating to think about how a small chain of 4 amino acids could have such targeted effects. This challenges the way we often think about medicine. Instead of needing large, complex molecules, sometimes the most effective agents are very simple. Cardiogen reminds us that biology often operates through small, precise signals. By tapping into those, we might find ways to guide the body back toward balance. As we reflect on Cardiogen, it's important to remember that this peptide is part of a broader class of organ-specific regulators. These include peptides for the brain, liver, lungs, kidneys, and more. Together, they form a toolkit for addressing aging and disease at the cellular level. Cardiogen is just one piece, but it represents a model of how targeted peptides could transform medicine. In summary, Cardiogen is a cardiac bioregulator peptide studied for its ability to normalize protein synthesis, support metabolism, and improve resilience of the heart. It shows promise in recovery from cardiac injury, in stabilizing heart rhythm, and in promoting healthy aging. But because the research is still limited and largely regional, its use remains experimental. Anyone curious about Cardiogen should approach with interest, but also with caution. Disclaimer: this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before starting or changing any health, fitness, or supplement routine. Thanks for listening, keep learning, and stay curious.